Hello and welcome to Different Perspectives. I'm Paul Indiho. Tonight on Different Perspectives, we examine the latest U.S. sanctions on senior officers of the Rwandan Defense Forces and what they mean for a broader context of Eastern DRC's long-standing complicated war. Washington has sanctioned top RDF officials, including Army Chief of Staff Vincent Nyakarundi, over Rwanda's alleged support for M23 rebellion operating inside the Democratic Republic of Congo. This is a significant diplomatic step, but to understand whether this changes anything, we have to look back, go beyond the headlines, and at least try to get some kind of context. Look at it from the historical, the economic, and security arguments that are driving this conflict. And that takes us to one place called Lubaya. Lubaya is a mining town in northern Kivu. On the surface, looks like many other small towns within eastern DRC, but its rugged terrain, red earth makeshift structures make it strategically perfect. It sits on one of the most important critical minerals in the world today. And we are talking about coltan. The area produces a substantial share of global coltan, a mineral essential for smartphones, computers, advanced electronic systems, renewable energy systems, and defense technologies. Control over Lubaya is not just symbolic. It is economic leverage. Historically, armed movements within the DRC have financed themselves through control of mines like that one in Lubaya. During the Second Congo War in the 2000s, I covered part of that. I've been following the Congo story. Rebel groups, including RCD Goma, relied heavily on minerals that were coming out of that region to sustain themselves militarily. Conflict and commerce became intertwined. Today, critics argue that we are seeing a modern version of that model. M23 controls the territory near the key mining areas around Rubaya. Those places are like heavily fortified in a sense that there are so many militia, also many roadblocks even going to some of those places to access those minerals. You and I, as ordinary people, can't just access those places. You need clearance from the top, either the rebels themselves or even government, because you have all sorts of interests in that part of the countries. International observers and UN experts repeatedly raised concerns about illicit mineral flows crossing into Rwanda. Take, for example, Rwanda is on the cutting edge of being one of those countries that sells these minerals on the international market. You go to the Middle East, you go to any city in the European capitals, right here in Washington, D.C., chances are that you're going to run into some of those minerals that come directly from Rwanda. So the question tonight is, where does Rwanda get these minerals? Of course, from Washington's perspective, the sanctions appear to be aimed at disrupting this pattern, tying it to military accountability and economic incentives. Now, let's break it down. Let's look at it for what it is, especially these sanctions that we are talking about. Firstly, the present shift in tone. For many years, Rwanda was widely viewed in Western capitals as the post-genocide success story. Very disciplined, they are hard on corruption, development-oriented. President Kagame flies to all these Western capitals. Some people have called him the darling of the West. This is important for context. But sanctioning senior military officials narrows that diplomatic space. Secondly, sanctions signal deterrence. The United States is effectively saying that cross-border support for armed groups will carry consequences. For context or for perspective, M23 is not the only rebel movement operating in that region. There are over 100 plus rebel movements operating in that region, different militias. You have government interests, you have government officials who are interested in some of those areas. You have those rebels who also have, interest in those areas. And you have other competing external and internal forces competing for the same resources in Rubaya. Symbolically and politically, that matters. But this is another side. Kigali, on the other hand, has rejected those accusations, calling them, in some cases, politically motivated. They have denied any arguments to suggest that they command and control M23. They have categorically denied any involvement in that part of DRC. Rwanda argues that its security in Eastern DRC concerns are legitimate, particularly regarding the presence of the FDLR, a militia with roots linked to perpetrators of the 1994 genocide. From another Rwandan perspective, Eastern Congo has long been a source of cross-border insecurity. Kigali, of course, maintains that Kinshasa has failed to neutralize armed groups hostile to Rwanda fully. So that's why, to some extent, they're involved in what's been going on in that region and supporting M23 rebels. So, given that context, the sanctions are seen not as accountability, but as pressure that overlooks Rwanda's security. These sanctions present a shift in tone. For many years, Rwanda was widely seen in Western capitals as a post-genocide success story. You look at Rwanda, the development, the buildings in Kigali, the fight against corruption, and this story that has been sold by Rwanda. And it's strategically an important place on the African continent. Yes, there's no question or no doubt that President Paul Kagame has done a lot of good things for that country. No question. I don't agree with some of his policies, but I think he has done phenomenally well. But sanctioning senior military officers narrows that diplomatic space. Secondly, sanctions signal deterrence. The United States is effectively saying that cross-border support for armed groups will not go unpunished. We're going to put consequences, or we're going to punish you for you not listening to us. Remember, not too long ago, there was what they called the Washington Accords. First, it was the foreign ministers of Rwanda and DRC. They came to the State Department, they signed the documents, then they went to the White House, they signed off on those documents, and then that, in a way, started the process of trying to get these groups together to agree to the terms and conditions, the pull out and stop, and Rwanda to pull out and stop supporting M23. So fast forward a couple months later, it took a lot of work, a lot of technocrats from the United States, even Qatar and other places, including Africa, were involved in those talks. Then it came to what now we call the Washington Accords, where the president of Rwanda and the president of DRC came to Washington in front of the world. They signed a peace accord saying that they are going to stop, for Rwanda is going to stop supporting M23 rebels, and right in front at the, now called the US Peace Institute or Trump Peace Institute, They signed those agreements among themselves, and President Trump was one of the signatories. So technically, what we are looking at, could this be the beginning, or does this signal that what they signed here in Washington, D.C. is falling apart? And that's why now the United States is trying to crack the whip and impose sanctions on these people. Or could it be that symbolically and politically, this has not resulted into anything? But here is another side. For example, Kigali rejects accusations that it commands and controls M23. Rwandan President Paul Kagame has occasionally said that they should stop threatening him with sanctions. For example, take a listen here. He's talking to a local audience here, and he categorically talks about these sanctions, how they are, they keep bothering him with sanctions, and they should worry about their own problems. Take a listen.
No one comes around and thinks they can, they come, hey, I want to sanction you. What? Go to hell. Just go to hell.
But I could also argue that there is also a structural issue here. Sanctions target individuals, but Eastern Congo instability is sustained by systems. You have so many people operating in that small area where the minerals are, from the rebel groups that we've talked about, maybe over 140 plus. Then you have internal and external forces that are also operating in there. You have these tech companies, they have scouts on the ground who are making sure that they can get whatever they want to get. And we're not talking about just people who are connected. Almost every single person in the world who wants to do business in DRC is in that part, from the United States, from China, from Russia, and other African countries. You find expatriates or smugglers who are disguised as expatriates in that region. I've been to those places, my friend. The cars that you see on the road, the people that you see when you're seated in any of those hotels, you're running into people who you were like, whoa, who is this person? And I've been in those situations where I run into people and I'm like, what the heck is this person doing here? But mineral smuggling networks are adaptive. Supply chains are layered. And if coltan continues to flow through informal structures, armed actors will continue to compete for control of that region. So Rubaya illustrates clearly, if the economic incentives remain intact, pressure on individuals may not dismantle the financial architecture of the conflict. So meanwhile, civilians continue to bear the cost. The displacement in northern Kivu is apparent. It remains very, very high. The last time I was there, you had over like 1 million people internally displaced because of the ongoing fighting. These rebels come and attack them. They have to flee, or they take everything or get killed. So you have a lot of internal fighting as well for people trying to get some of these areas. For families on the ground, the sanction debate is very distant. It doesn't mean a thing. What matters locally is security and safety on the roads. Because without safety, these women who are usually running for their lives get caught up in, they're raped, everything that you can think about is done to them. So there is that urgency right there. And through talking to people, they talk about transparency. They want that money gotten from the minerals to go and make a difference, do something for those people who are enduring or who are living in those scenarios, who bear the brunt of the war. So Where does this leave us? The US sanctions mark a serious escalation in diplomatic posture, but they acknowledge that mineral corridors like Lubaya are central to the conflict. But the deeper question remains, can external pressure reshape incentives that are fundamentally and economically or security driven? I don't think anybody can answer that. So what we need to focus on, structural reform, including mineral traceability, like what they did for when there was this whole campaign about blood diamonds. So they came up with this traceability thing, knowing that, like, let's say, for example, if a diamond is gotten from Liberia or South Africa, it has like a seal from like the Bears or some of those legit companies that trade in those minerals. One thing you have to know about Eastern Congo is that it's a conflict of militias, it's a conflict of markets. Rwanda is just a town. It is a strategic intersection between local survival, regional rivalry, and global demand. And at the end of the day, these sanctions change nothing, absolutely nothing. And that's my perspective for today. For ongoing coverage and in-depth analysis, stay with Ndiho Media across YouTube, Instagram, X, LinkedIn, Facebook, Thread, Blue Sky, and other social media platforms. If you appreciate this kind of conversations or independent reporting, support our work, feel free to send us your donation via PayPal, Cash App, Zelle, or subscribe to our social media platforms. Become a paid member for premium access to all the content that we produce. Obviously, your donation will help us research, stream, produce, and maybe hire some people to bring you more stories about Africa and what really matters to you. Follow, share, like, and subscribe to us on YouTube, X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Spotify, and Substack. I'm Paul Ndiho. This is a different